Happy Halloween. And this happens to be a blue moon. And today, for following Tarot Tuesday, the card is the number 18, the moon. Now, it's Saturday, October 31st. I normally don't sort of date the videos that I'm shooting. I'm thrilled that this kind of coincidence presented itself, or that along the path here we were able to focus in on one of the major arcana archetypes in coincidence with its planetary archetype, the moon itself. A blue moon, in case you weren't aware, is the second full moon in a single month. It's actually nothing super mystical or magical. It's kind of like seeing 11:11 on your microwave clock, or the year 2000 ending in 3 zeros. It doesn't have any mathematical or statistical significance per se, but it's an interesting opportunity, particularly when it falls on an occasion like Samhain, Halloween. And it's said that on Halloween, the veil between this world and the other world is at its thinnest, at thinnest point for the whole year, and that's when spirits from the other side can communicate more effectively, and we can connect better with the spirit world itself. And that's why we dress up in Halloween costumes. We do that to scare the bad spirits back into the spirit world and not let them come into this world, as it is the old traditions go. If you want to explore the moon as the archetype of the moon, I did a long video on astrology and the personality types, where I spent a good chunk of the first section of the video on the moon, the lunar archetype and the solar archetype. But in tarot, it's a little bit different. The moon presents itself in the card 18. Numerologically, 18 is 1 plus 8 is 9, so it has a correspondence to the hermit at a higher order of energy and expression. And the moon also has some connections to the priestess card. Early in the major arcana, the priestess is a representation of the spirit world, or the etheric realm, or the astral plane, or the subtle plane, depending on which tradition you come from. That's just a fancy way of saying the objects that exist in the mind. Thoughts, feelings, dreams, currents of energy, instincts, that sort of thing. Now, in the 18 card, when we're looking at the moon, visually speaking, as you can see, we have a pool of water at the bottom. There is some sort of crab or lobster crawling out of the water. We have 2 dogs in the foreground. As we recede into the backdrop, we see 2 stone pillars. And those stone pillars, as you're aware, occur through tarot again and again and again. They're representative of Boaz and Joaquin, the 2 pillars from the Kabbalistic tradition. Sometimes we call those the left wing and the right wing. But in order to access the holiest of holies, one has to travel between the 2 pillars. This is ancient Semitic lore and mysticism. The holiest of holies is our connection to God and to the divine. And traditionally speaking, only the priests, the high priests, were allowed to enter the holiest of holies, where the Ark of the Covenant was kept, at high festivals of the year. Now, looking at the card, the moon, it is more about the structure and objects that exist in the subtle plane than it is the existence of the subtle plane, if that makes any sense. So the subtle plane we see and learn about in the priestess card, the emotional psychic realm. In the moon card, we actually get the objects that exist in the psychic realm at the individual level. The unconscious, we call it. And I've been imagining this as I've contemplated this card over the last couple of weeks as the baser or representing a hierarchy of psychological, neurological constructs that we all have. The crustacean, the crab, the lobster, if you're a Jordan Peterson fan, The Lobster, about dominance hierarchies and the real primal nature of those positions of power and energy and hierarchy within society. But we could think of it maybe as the reptilian base instincts that we have. Now, along the way, this tarot journey over the last few months, and I mentioned lots of times I'm turning 50, and I only say that because I'm still learning new stuff. I'm still growing as an individual being. I'm still evolving my soul. I've kept myself open to new ideas and new information and learning new things, and kept myself curious about existence through my life. Unfortunately, there are people who stop growing at a certain point and after high school never read a book again. That's not the case with me. In the last couple of months, in a desire to evolve the health of my relationships, and for my wife and I to improve communication between us, we've had a number of discussions on how we can communicate better. And I recognized something along the way that had to do with being territorial. And I'd never ever thought of myself as territorial before. But it had to do with kind of being shocked out of a particular state. As an introvert, I tend to go into the inner world. Carl Jung described that as that inner world for an introvert being more real and more valid and valuable than the external world and external relationships. Not to diminish external by any means. And I recognized that in certain states, I was territorial, and I had a knee-jerk or kind of a primal reaction of defense. And I think we can all get this way with certain ideas or feelings or a sense of safety. And as I was contemplating on this territorial nature, I love animals. I would love to have a dog. I don't have a dog, but this image of this of a dog and a dog being territorial and defending its territory was something that I recognized kind of in this primitive instinct in me, where I would growl, or I would become get my hackles up in defense of either a certain idea or a certain state that I was in. And that instinctual response wasn't the optimal kind of response that I could have had. And it became conscious to me that this territorial instinct acts like a bit like a guiding spirit, or it could be thought of as a spirit ally in some sense, or a spirit force. And in the moon card, you can see these two dogs in the foreground. So we get this really primal reptilian brain crawling up out of the pond of evolution. And then we have the dogs, and this sort of instinctual level within the self. And then we start to stack structures of the unconscious mind. So the moon card has, if you read that, go to the text and the simple explanations, actually kind of has a bad reputation, or a bad surface connotation of illusion, of kind of defensive-ness, of distortions of ideas, and these things that happen at the etheric level. And years and years ago, I learned about limiting beliefs, trauma triggers. In NLP, they're called anchors, where certain stimuli can provoke certain response. It's Pavlovian, right? A Pavlovian being, ring a bell, serve the dog a dish of food, and then when you ring the bell, condition the dog. This is Pavlovian conditioning, it is that instinctual sort of programming that we have at an unconscious level. If we don't become conscious of that through our lifetimes and analyze and integrate some of these real submerged psychic structures, they have a tremendous amount of influence over us in our day-to-day lives, where our unconscious programming, it kind of runs amok, and we find ourselves being controlled by these primal drives and these primal instincts. The moon also reflects upon the waters. The waters are the unconscious mind. And so we can think of the moon perhaps in ways that are closest to the Jungian shadow concept of projection and reflection than any other card that I can really think of in the major arcana. As I'm going along here, I had a notification come up on my phone that someone liked and commented on my videos. We're coming down to the end of the major arcana. We have the Sun, Judgment, which I'm really looking forward to exploring with you, and the World, and that completes the journey of the Fool through the major arcana. I would love to get some feedback from you, what you thought was valuable out of this series, if you've been following along this journey with me, maybe what your favorite cards are. Some people have given me tremendous feedback on maybe some oversights, and maybe some, I think I used the wrong name for an archetypal figure. I'm pretty sure I got the story right, but I got the wrong names. So if you've got some feedback on this series, love to hear about it in the comments. And then I thought I'd do a couple of high-level videos on tarot to integrate the major arcana, to kind of give a capstone couple of videos so that people can reference from the one video and then be able to access the other 22. And I'm going to tune up some early videos. Part of what set this off for me was I was a member of a couple of tarot forums, and in one case a member for a number of years, and I got canceled out of the group for being for having a penis, basically. And I wasn't allowed to speak about archetypes that related to me. I was dogpiled and ganged up on by a coordinated group of attacks in these groups across platforms that spilled over into YouTube, where I was, interestingly, I was harassed for several weeks by a group of people who were making all kinds of weird accusations. My early arcana videos, when we were exploring the magician, the priestess, the empress, and the emperor, were tinged with some of that frustration, let's say, and I really wanted to speak to that nature of archetypes in relation to what do they call it? Critical race theory, critical gender theory, and how it's manifesting and in beliefs for people today, because I was kind of frustrated by it. Now, just as a little aside, the messenger Hermes, who I've talked a lot about, is coordinated or represented in the Fool card. It's a messenger of the gods. And Hermes, in some mythology, with Aphrodite, fathered a number of mythic figures where we get the term hermaphrodite, Hermes and Aphrodite. And from this issue, let's say, that's the word we're using, estate planning in my financial word, our issue are our children. From this issue, the issue of Hermes and Aphrodite, we have a whole set of archetypes around gender fluid and different expressions of sexuality, let's say, and different expressions of gender. And that is held within mythology, not just in Greek mythology, but in Hindu mythology and mythologies of the indigenous people of North America, I'm sure all over the world. So in any case, I'm gonna refine those first 4 cards and treat the Fool separately. So this project is going to go on for a little while. My goal is then to have a really consistent set of reference points for people who are exploring the deeper archetypes of tarot. So I'd love to get your feedback on that. If you haven't subscribed yet, stay tuned, because I plan on carrying this through for a number of months still. Back to the moon card. So this notion of illusions and reflections is a deep archetypal pattern that's reflected in sayings and expressions and proverbs, the proverbial expressions, let's say, about the nature of the soul. There's one that sticks in my mind from Taoist tradition in the Tao Te Ching in one translation. It might have been Thomas Merton's, and I think it was chapter 19 or 18. I may be mistaken. If it's 18, that's interesting. He who does not trust must not be trusted. He or they who does not trust those who don't trust shouldn't be trusted. If you get somebody who is saying to you, you have to trust me, everyone else out there is a liar, but you should trust me, that's a worrying kind of presentation. It's a red flag if you're entering into a relationship. That structure maps to Jung's concept of shadow projection. The things that we reject about our own self, we project or reflect back onto us from other people. So our little foibles and frustrations and things when we see people behaving or when they engage with us in certain ways, and that upsets us or triggers something from that primal, reptilian or instinctual, territorial nature of the self. Our conscious mind can perceive that as an outside event, but through all of these proverbial expressions we get around the world, and love thy neighbor as thyself, do unto others as they would have do unto you. The Buddhists have an expression that dates back to 500 BC that's basically exactly the same pattern. In indigenous traditions, I have friends who say, I am you and you are me, which is a recognition of the sameness of all of us, the universality of our nature, but also recognition that if I see someone outside behaving in a certain way, that's me as well. And so it shifts responsibility. The expression namaste. Namaste is I greet the higher self in you, and I see you enacting your purpose and acting out the narrative of your soul, your karma. And the recognition is that it's reciprocated or reciprocal. So when two people greet in such a way, they greet each other with compassion and understanding of who they are at a soul level. The moon is where things get distorted, where the reflections still occur. And it's important for us as we're growing as individuals to become aware of those things. And we naturally do over time. There's a psychologist who I just bought a number of his books and I've been listening to his lectures, a Harvard psychologist by the name of Robert Kegan. And Robert Kegan has been around for a long time. I'm sure he's in his 60s, if not 70s now. He built on the developmental psychology of people like Piaget and the stages of development and growth that we go through. And when I was studying psychology in the early 90s in university, the notion was, we had a couple of notions about the brain and about individual development. Your brain is pretty much, by the time you're 20, that's it. You don't get to grow new brain cells, which is why you should just say no to drugs, because they kill brain cells and you can't grow them back. There was no concept of adult development or growth or further stages. But Kegan identifies 3 stages of adult growth and development that we have opportunity to pass through as we grow in our lives. And the third of them we could summarize as the cultivation of wisdom, perhaps. It's deeper than that, but that cultivation of wisdom comes with self-reflection and self-analysis and integrating those unconscious parts that drive us and can affect us in our day-to-day lives. So this is where some of these illusions of the moon come in. And I actually think that there's a deep, really strong, powerful message that should be positive when we're reflecting on the moon. And that is, we have the ability to understand these instinctual processes and to integrate them. And so in my practice over the last couple of months, as I recognized this territorial instinct, was to become aware of it. When does this thing get set off? How does it work? My thoughts on how it works are connected to this. At any given moment, our sensory systems take in a couple of million bits of information. The sensation of the cloth of my shirt on my arm, my bum against the stool that I'm sitting on, the temperature of the floor on my feet, the sounds of the house systems running in the background, the furnace fan, etc., etc. All of that information is coming into my system. Now, where you are, you may notice as well the position that you're sitting in, and perhaps the rate of your breathing, or those things that we don't normally pay attention to. And when we start to investigate or contemplate these reactions, we can train that part of our brain that I have associated with, and I believe correspond to the figure of the Fool, Tote, Mercury, Hermes, this messenger of the gods, this internal communication or spirit guide that we get that directs and draws our attention to certain things. So we can train that part of our brain to repattern and react in different ways. And we begin by drawing attention to those things. So I would challenge you over the next week or so, particularly because the veil between this world and the next is extra thin at this time of year, to allow yourself to notice the kinds of unconscious patterns that come up. Notice information that's important to you that suddenly popped into your awareness, because that is that internal sort of guide or spirit making you aware of things that are salient or meaningful or important to you. And if you notice that you have some instincts that get triggered at an unconscious level, you can say thank you for noticing, and you can sort of ask or program those internal structures of brain, of neurology and biology and intuition to help you focus your attention on the awareness of those things and feed you information, perhaps in dreams, perhaps in contemplations or meditations, or ideas that just pop into your head when you're out for a walk or driving in your car, about how to integrate those different processes to help you continue to evolve the nature of your soul. My name is Shannon Douglas. This is another edition of Tarot Tuesday, filmed on a Saturday. I hope you enjoy it. Next week is going to be the archetype of the sun. The solar archetype is a universal one, of course, because the sun plays such an important role in our lives and always has. And we're going to dig into some of the conscious mind stuff associated with the sun, and also the sense of power and victory and energy that comes from peak solar activity. Again, my name is Shannon Douglas. Make sure you like and subscribe to the video, and love to get your feedback on the kind of flow that we're going through, and maybe some questions or ideas that may occur to you as you're watching these. Hope you have a terrific week. It's Tarot Tuesday today. My name is Shannon Douglas.